At this point, I would,
Hello.
oh, yes.
I do have a question. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, originally my question was about the programs, but thank you to the gentleman from Ameren. They did give out some information, so I'm limiting what I'm asking. But it has brought to mind that one of the gentlemen said that they're getting calls from other partnering agencies asking them to help with getting the information out to the public. My question now is there more that Ameren can do as a company to get this information out, and especially to seniors? I appreciate the numbers that he gave that we could call, but a specific question is, if a senior is facing medical hardship, is there any way or any specific number or request that they can make from the number that he gave to get the information for registration for that program?
Yes, and let me make sure I give that to you. So if you want to register medical equipment, you have a medical hardship and want to have that considered in time to pay, anything like that, have you got a pen ready to write down a number?
I do.
Okay, it's 800 552
Okay.
7583.
Okay, it's 800-552-7583.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that. And this will connect me with somebody to help getting registered for any medical hardship, be it equipment or medical bills, etc. Is that correct?
Yeah, medical hardship, need additional time to pay, additional information, to avoid threat of disconnect, things like that. So this is the number specifically for what you've mentioned.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I believe that the judge and the commissioners are ready to go ahead and take over for the second part of the hearing. So I will transfer the host duties over to them. And other than that, I'd like to again thank you for attending this evening's public hearing, and stay on the line for the second part of the hearing. Thank you.
Commissioner Coleman is here.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Morris Woodruff. I'm the Chief Regulatory Law Judge for the Commission, and I am the presiding officer for this portion of the hearing. I understand you've already had a chance to ask a lot of questions, and hopefully you got a lot of good answers. I want to emphasize that this portion of the hearing now is the formal part of the hearing, in that we'll be asking members of the public to provide testimony that they want to, however they want to inform the commission. I want to tell you that the commission and myself cannot answer questions at this point because we have to be impartial in making a decision later in the case after our formal portion of our hearing. This hearing is being recorded and it's going to be transcribed by the court reporter. A transcript will become part of the record in the case and it will be reviewed by all the commissioners. If you want to see the file, you can do so by going to the commission's website at psc.mo.gov. And we have at least one commissioner on the line tonight with us, Commissioner Coleman. And I believe Commissioner Holtzman was going to be joining us also. Is Commissioner Holtzman there?
Can you hear me? Can you
I
hear
can
me,
hear you.
Commissioner Holtzman?
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
All right, I'm on.
Very good. Commissioner Coleman or Commissioner Holtzman, would you like to make any welcoming remarks?
Thank you, Judge. I'd only like to say that we appreciate those who have participated in the Q&A section of this to get a clear understanding of what this case is about, and to thank you for your time and attention tonight to these issues. Welcome.
Commissioner Holtzman?
Thank you. Just want to say Commission welcomes all public input. It does matter. It makes a difference. We listen, and it influences the direction of how all these proceedings go. So I want to thank everybody or anybody who provides testimony, and thank you, Judge. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The first thing we'll do with the formal part of the hearing is we need to determine which attorneys are here on behalf of the parties. So I'll ask you to enter their appearances. First of all, for Ameren.
Good evening, Judge. This is Jim Lowry making an appearance on behalf of Ameren, Missouri. Thank you.
And for the commission staff?
This is Whitney Payne on behalf of the staff of the Missouri Public Service Commission, and it's 200 Madison Street, Jefferson City, Missouri, Suite 800, 65101.
Thank you. And for the Office of Public Counsel?
Thank you, Mark Poston, for the Office of the Public Counsel.
And are there any other parties here that are represented by their attorneys? Okay. What we'll do then is I'll ask for people to come forward and testify. I will swear you in to swear to tell the truth, and then I'll ask you to limit your comments to about 5 minutes so we can keep things moving. And we had one person that pre-registered to give testimony, so I'll call that name first, and that would be Dana Gray. Is Dana Gray on the line?
Yes, I am.
Very good. If you please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And you said your name was Dana Gray?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in what city do you live?
I live in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay. What would you like to tell us?
I work with an affordable housing provider called Tower Grove Neighborhoods Community Development Corporation. And we have roughly 76 affordable apartments here in South St. Louis. During the last year and a half, more than a quarter of those households have needed assistance, and an added $12 a month to their bill will create an undue burden. One of the tenants submitted comments. Well, I've got comments from 14 of our tenants that I have submitted in writing, and most all of them went on about how they're already struggling to pay their bills and that the additional $12 would be a burden. And one of them asked, why would the electric bill increase for my 800 square foot apartment be the same as a large home? This proposed fee increase is disproportionate to our electric use. So I just want to point out to the commission that low-income households would be subjected to an undue burden when all residential customers are going to see a $12 increase in their bill. Also in my written comments, I shared the suggested calls to action for Ameren that were developed by a collaboration of organizations, including the St. Louis COVID-19 Regional Response Team, People's Community Action Corporation, Missouri Veterans Endeavor, the National Housing Trust, Community First Plus, Empower Missouri, Generate Health, Homes for All, and Tower Grove Neighborhood CDC, and stating our opposition to this rate increase, specifically bringing to the forefront the struggles that low-income families are feeling at this time during the pandemic. And so we have outlined calls to action for Ameren that we hope that they will consider and that the Public Service Commission will consider as well. And that was no bill increases for these low-income families, no increase to the fixed monthly charge, include consumer protections along the new rate designs, no shutoffs for non-payment, invest corporate profits in debt forgiveness, realistic and expanded payment and billing plans, no penalties and fees when folks are facing disconnection, and greatly increase funding for bill assistance and do more to help working families and those on fixed income achieve lower bills during the long term. And then last would be greater data transparency. I attended a MIA low income work group meeting earlier this year, and we learned that the utility, when they collect data on bill disconnections, the information on disconnection for someone that is moving to a new location and puts in a request to have their service turned off is lumped into the same data collection as those that are facing disconnection because of inability to pay. So if the data was collected and sorted better, there could be more effective ways to help those folks that are facing struggles to pay their utility bills.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Any of the commissioners have questions for Ms. Gray? Any
You.
questions from, go ahead.
I would like an understanding, Ms. Gray, from your last comment regarding the data collection. If I understand correctly, your impression is that if the data was separated from those who are moving and transferring service to some other location, from those who, this is where I need you to make sure I understand correctly, from those who have trouble paying their bills, it would give the utility company a better idea of how to address the low income and those that are delinquent issues. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, ma'am. And also then it would provide more insight to stakeholders that are looking to advocate on behalf of those individuals that are struggling to pay their bills. But when all of that disconnection data is lumped into one file, it's difficult to tell how many of those are struggling financially versus how many of those are just moving.
I get it now. I see that your concern is that it's lumped together. There's no way of knowing that. Is there any reason to believe that the utility company doesn't have a method by which they can siphon that material or separate that material? I would think that it's a possibility that they do this already. But so I just wondered, you had mentioned you were told this, and so it's an interesting um, idea, but I just wonder if it's not being separated some kind of way already.
This was information that was gleaned during a Missouri Energy Efficiency Advisory Collaborative Low Income Work Group meeting.
Okay. Okay.
And Ameren's representatives were present, and also this was information that Jeff Marks from the Office of Public Counsel brought to bear and was questioning as well.
Okay. I appreciate that information. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you, Judge.
Thank you. Any questions from the parties for Ms. Gray?
None from the company, Your Honor.
Thank you. Then I thank you for your testimony, Ms. Gray.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Gray was the only person who had pre-registered. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Yes, I would like to speak.
Okay. And could you tell us your name, please?
Yes. Do you need first and last name?
Yes, please.
All right, Joanne Berger.
Is that B-U-R-G-E-R?
It's Berger.
Okay. We want to get these right so that the court reporter can get the names down.
Certainly. Thank you.
All right. If you please raise your right hand.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And what city do you live in?
I live in St. Louis, Missouri.
All right. Thank you. What would you like to tell us?
The first thing I would like to say is that I believe that this rate increase will dramatically affect a lot of seniors, those on Social Security, especially, who pride themselves in paying their bills, but faced with something of this magnitude, and it doesn't seem like it's a lot right now to most people, but it is for seniors. Especially now with, we're coming off the back end of COVID here. There's been a lot of turmoil in many seniors' lives. They've lost loved ones. They've had expenses that they did not anticipate. So I'm saying that, asking that Ameren kind of structure their current analysis of what they would supposedly provide a bill for, that they would make it so that if you are a senior, you would fall in a different tier. I think that seniors would not be opposed to paying something, but I think the level that they're going to be required to give with this rate increase is far too much. And I think that will create some undue hardships on many seniors who pride themselves on being able to pay their bills. They're not delinquent, they're just need some help with the amount that's going to be levied each month. So that would be my first comment. The second one is the fact that I realize that Ameren is trying to march into the future, and that's all fine and good. But many of these items that they're going to be investing in, like wind and solar, there are certain levels of those particular, energy solutions that often are not very cost effective. They don't produce the bang for what the cost is. And as I was saying earlier to members of Ameren, there are many times when wind and solar have negative impacts for the neighborhood, for the community, especially wind. there are many analyses that have been done which indicate that there are some problems with wind for people who live nearby communities, also for animals. Their ability to thrive in their local environment is often impacted, and the same for people. So there's a downside sometimes to pressing forward with something that is needed. And there may be a lot of negativity for Ameren as far as their profitability off of those items. And they may find out later on that they are not as profitable or as good for the community as once they were thought to be. So that is something I would think that they would need to look into and to really consider that. You know, that those upfront costs may not come back with excessive profits, and then what the customer will face is additional charges and additional levies to their bills. And that's something we want to avoid. And I understand that the general drift is now to, you know, that everything new and better and energy efficient is always good. And it is in most cases, but it also can have a rocky road getting to that point. And I just want to bring that in that this type of levying of charges to the consumer can be disastrous for a lot of people. And especially, again, I bring in the senior section. So that would be my main concern, is that seniors would have a tiered cost levied on their bills that would be much less than maybe you would levy on the average person's bill that still has a job, you know, funding, those kind of things, and is, you know, is still in the workforce, where the senior many times is not. Also, I do think that if Ameren proceeds with caution, maybe doing things at a shorter pace, then maybe they won't have that investment outlay that won't come back with profit, and they'll be able to avoid some of that. Those are my main two comments. I realize that, you know, if we want more things and beneficial things in our lives, it's important to be able to pay for them. But this is an excessive amount, I believe, based on the profitability of Ameren, based on the success or failure of these new programs that may or may not come to fruition. And I thank you very much for taking time to listen to me. I appreciate you giving us all a chance to voice our opinions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions?
Not I. Thank you.
Thank you. Or from the parties?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wishing to testify? If you want to testify, just speak up. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone else coming forward. Any final thoughts, commissioners?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go ahead and testify. I was just waiting for anybody else to speak up as well.
All right, go ahead. Tell us your name, please.
Sure. My first name is Rajadhar, Rajadhar. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful. And my last name is Reddy, Reddy.
Okay. If you please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And you live in St. Louis also?
Correct. Yes.
All right. What would you like to tell us?
Sure. For everybody else on the call, this might just be re-summarizing some of the questions I asked earlier, so I apologize if you're repeating if you're hearing me repeat some of those same points. But I do have some concerns, I think, over some of the transparency in this plan, and at least how some of these um, problems have been described to the public. There's been quite a bit of news coverage over the rate increases and Amron's various reasoning for it, and I am generally supportive of renewable energy sources and moving towards that, and I'm not here trying to disparage that. But I do have concerns over the significant rate increase of $12 or about 11% on average rate increases for households across Missouri. I think others testifiers have also made the very eloquent point that this will very disproportionately affect low income and older consumers. During the question and answer session, I believe Ameren made several mentions of the unprecedented, I think was the term that was used a lot, unprecedented energy assistance funds available for consumers who are having troubles paying their bills. However, still this year, Ameren disconnected, I think, more than 25,000, if I have the number correct from the PSC data, more than 25,000 households from their electric services. And another 209,000 are also behind on their bills. So Ameren kept on making these points about this unprecedented energy assistance available and all the phone numbers that you could call and all these different things. But still, we seem to be having issues with tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of households across Missouri having issues paying their bills. And so that didn't quite line up for me, and I didn't feel like Ameren really had appropriate or really had responses to explain why that discrepancy still existed. They said they couldn't speak to individual situations or why people might be having trouble paying their bills on a more individual level. But to me, that doesn't quite line up if they say that that these funds available that people can apply for, and yet we have so many people still having trouble paying their bills. I think the other issue with that as well is that the way energy assistance and the way financial assistance programs in general are often set up is that they create this patchwork of systems that have so many different hoops that you have to jump through, so many different phone numbers you have to call, so many different registration forms you have to fill out, so many different online websites to fill out, which obviously all form various barriers, specifically for low income and older consumers, but also just across the board, that make it difficult to access funds, because the whole point is to make those funds difficult to access. And so I think that there's probably a lot of those issues with why people still haven't been able to get access to those services. So, providing that as a solution for people who can't pay their bills appropriately and who will struggle to pay their bills even more with this rate increase is not a sufficient justification for me from Ameren. So I just want to make that whole point clear. And I think it's also important to note that I believe, again, according to data, and I think we're pulling some of this data from various nonprofits that have looked at the public filings and all of that that are interested in housing issues, that Ameren gained about a 200 million profit in the past 2 quarters. Forgive me if that number is not quite correct, but that's my understanding from the nonprofits that have collected that data. And so Ameren, received a 200 million profit gain in the last 2 quarters, and yet is now asking for about a 300 million, and it seems like it was negotiated down by PSC to about 224 million. But again, asking for that much amount gain from their consumers in the form of energy rate increases. And that 200 million profit gain also included a $9 million increase in their CEO salary. And I don't even know how that might have affected their other chief executive salaries and other salaries and bonuses down the line. So those are all my concerns as well. And that, if Ameren was really concerned about not increasing rates as much as possible and trying to delay rate increases due to the pandemic and not trying to put people in more trouble than they already are, I would say if they already had a $200 million profit gain, they would reinvest those funds in whatever energy infrastructure expansions they're making, and then see what additional funds they still needed to make these renewable energy expansions and all of that. But instead, it seems like they're both making $200 million in profit as well as asking for another $300 million for consumers. And that doesn't also seem to quite line up for me. And then a third point I think we made was that obviously we all know that the energy infrastructure plan is going through the federal government right now with the budget reconciliation process in Congress. Obviously, because of reconciliation, we all expect that to be signed presumably by the end of the year or around that time frame. And that's also expected to include various pieces to also support renewable energy infrastructure expansions and that sort of thing. So I think a couple of callers previously during the question and A section made the point that, is there going to be any money available in that plan to avoid the rate increases that Missourians would experience because of these expansions. And Ameren basically said that, oh, well, those any federal funds that are made available through that plan wouldn't be available for this rate review. And so if they happen to affect finances in the future, then maybe we reduce rates. And that was kind of their explanation for that. I would say if Ameren was already able to delay their energy rate increases up until this point, we would delay those a few more months until we know exactly what that plan is going to come forward with. Since we know it's going to have to be done this year. See what federal funds are available, and then recalculate from there. If Ameren was already able to wait a year, I understand these processes are complicated. I'm not trying to diminish that. But I would say that we can wait a little bit longer to see what is going to be done at the federal level first, and then recalculate what the rate increases need to be on our consumers. Because it seems that there are going to be significant federal funds made available through that. And my issue is that Ameren might be asking for this $12, 11% rate increase, and then maybe federal funds will be available. And then in the future, Ameren might say, oh, well, we had these federal investments made, so we can reduce rates a little bit, but they may not reduce them all the way back to where they were before the pre-$12 rates. So they still end up making that much of a profit margin. So I think it's important to include these decisions as much as possible prior to any major rate increases and not after, because it makes it that much harder to make those decreases meaningful for consumers post hoc. And so I wanted to make all those points, and again, echo the very eloquent concerns made by other speakers about the effect that this will have on especially low-income and older consumers, but also across the board. I don't think the reasoning that it's been given is sufficient. I don't think it's been made transparent to the public exactly all the financial implications at stake here. I just want to make that comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the commissioners? Or from the parties?
No questions, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
No, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your testimony then, Mr. Reddy. Anyone else wishing to testify? All right. I'm not hearing anything else. Any final comments from Commissioner Coleman or Commissioner Holtzman?
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
I would just say thank you to everybody who participated.
Very well. And with that, then we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you all very much.